Leora woke to the smell of ash and blood. Her village, once alive with laughter and the scent of fresh bread, lay in ruins. Houses were broken, smoke curled into the sky, and the forest nearby was silent. Not a single soul remained, only shadows of the lives that had been. Her heart beat fast, not only from fear but from a strange, heavy sense of destiny pressing down on her. On her wrist glimmered a strange mark, faint at first, then burning red. She did not know how it got there. It pulsed with life like a heartbeat that was not her own. The villagers had told tales of curses, of old magic that demanded impossible tasks. But Leora had never believed them, until now. She had survived the massacre, but whispers in the wind warned her of worse yet to come. 4 names echoed in her mind. Alphas, rulers of rival territories, each more powerful and dangerous than the last. And according to the curse, all 4 wanted her dead. Yet she had to survive. Somehow she had to bond with them. Her first steps were careful, each footfall cautious on the broken earth. The forest ahead was dense, dark, and alive with the sounds of unseen creatures. She knew instinctively that the alphas were near. And one Kale would find her first. Kale was feared across the lands. His eyes, gray like storm clouds, could freeze a man in place. His power was legendary, his temper dangerous, and his hatred of strangers absolute. Leora had heard stories of him. Few survived encounters with Kale, and even fewer lived to tell of it. She heard a snapping twig and froze. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Then from the shadows he appeared, tall, armored, with a sword in his hand that glinted like cold fire. "Who are you?" His voice demanded, low and dangerous. "Why are you here?" I am no threat," Leora said, trying to keep her voice steady. Her heart hammered so hard she thought he might hear it. I am alone." Kyle's eyes narrowed. Something flickered there, perhaps doubt, perhaps curiosity. But doubt in him was dangerous. He stepped forward and the air seemed heavier, charged with power that made the hair on Leora's arms rise. Suddenly the mark on her wrist flared brightly. A flash of pain surged through her, sharp and sudden, and Kale staggered back as if struck by an invisible force. The bond had activated. Leora gasped. What is happening?" Kale's eyes widened, not with fear but with a mixture of awe and disbelief. This is impossible," he muttered. "No one has ever survived the bond. And yet," his voice softened almost unrecognizably, "you live." She did not understand the words, but she understood the meaning. She was now tied to him in ways that went beyond fear or choice. Her survival was linked to his, and his power was now tied to hers. A strange, painful connection ran through them, pulling at her chest, at her mind, at her very soul. "Move, or I will kill you," Kale said, but his sword did not leave his side. There was a hesitation, a moment where danger became fragile, where curiosity replaced pure wrath. I do not want to die," Leora whispered. "I must survive. I have to bond with you." Kale's eyes hardened. "Bond? You speak as if you understand." "You know nothing. I only know what the mark says," she said, gesturing to her wrist. "I must bond with 4 alphas. If I don't, I will die, and perhaps worse. So will others." Kale's face twisted with conflicting emotions. Rage, confusion. Something softer, almost human, flickered behind his eyes. He studied her, noting the way her hands trembled yet did not fall, the way her gaze held equal parts fear and determination. "Then it seems our fates are tied," he said finally, his voice quieter, more thoughtful. "And yet, I do not trust you." "I do not trust myself," Leora admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I must try." Kyle's hand hovered over his sword, then slowly lowered it. "This bond will not be easy," he said. "It will hurt. It will test you, and it will demand more than your life." "I understand," she said. "I am ready." The forest seemed to close around them as the bond strengthened. A wave of energy pulsed between them, and for a moment their surroundings blurred, their fears and desires intertwined. Leora felt Kale's anger, his loneliness, his grief. It was overwhelming but also strangely intimate. She had never known another's soul so completely. Then, in a sudden flash, she saw visions, shadowy figures moving through the forest. 3 more alphas, each one more dangerous than the last. Soren with eyes like burning coals, fierce and unforgiving. Arendor cold and calculating, his power silent but immense. Thalen ambitious and ruthless, his presence like a shadow that could swallow the sun. And all of them would want her dead. Fear clenched her stomach, sharp and cruel. She had survived the first challenge, but the others were coming. Each one would be a test of her courage, her strength, and perhaps her heart. Kale's gaze met hers, intense and unyielding. "You must prepare," he said. "They will come. And when they do, survival will not be enough. You must be stronger than fear itself." Lyra swallowed hard, nodding. "I will. I have no choice." The forest grew darker, the shadows longer. Night approached like a living thing, and Leora knew that she could not linger. She had to move, had to find the next alpha before he or she found her first. Every step would be dangerous. Every breath could be her last. Yet beneath the fear, a strange sense of resolve burned. She would survive. She would bond with them all. And somehow she would endure the hatred in their hearts and transform it into something, perhaps even trust. Perhaps even love. A howl echoed through the trees. Kale tensed, drawing his sword once more. Leora felt the bond flare, a sharp reminder that their fates were intertwined. She looked at him, eyes wide. "Is that another alpha?" Kale did not answer. He only nodded slowly, the sword trembling in his hand. The forest seemed to shiver, alive with power that was ancient and cruel. Leora's heart pounded, but she stepped forward anyway. She could not flee, not now. The bond demanded courage, demanded resilience, demanded her very soul, and somewhere deep inside, she realized something terrifying and beautiful. She had already begun to care for the one who wanted her dead most of all. A shadow moved in the distance. The next alpha approached. The test was beginning. And Leora knew, with every heartbeat, that survival would cost more than she had ever imagined. Her journey had begun, and with it, the dangerous, impossible, and intoxicating bonds that would define her fate. The shadow moved through the trees like a living storm. Leora's breath caught in her throat as she gripped her dagger tightly. Kale's sword gleamed, his gray eyes narrowing, muscles tense like coiled steel. The bond between them pulsed, a silent reminder that their fates were tied. From the darkness emerged Soren, his presence commanding and fierce. His eyes burned like coals, full of anger and suspicion. Leora could feel the warning in the air. The bond would not forgive weakness, and the slightest mistake could mean death. "You are far from safe, little one," Soren said, his voice low and controlled, dangerous like a predator holding back its attack. "The forest whispers your fate, and it is not kind." Leora swallowed hard. I must survive," she said, her voice firm, though her heart pounded like a drum. "I must bond with you all. It is the only way." Soren laughed, a sound both chilling and mesmerizing. "Do you think it will be that easy? That I will allow it? That I will not kill you on sight?" "I have no choice," she replied, stepping closer. "I am bound by the curse. If I fail, we all suffer." For a moment, Soren's eyes softened, and Leora felt a strange ripple through the bond. He hesitated, as though weighing her words against his own fury. Then, with a sudden movement, he lunged, a blur of speed and power. Leora barely dodged, rolling across the forest floor as Kale intercepted him, sword clashing against sword. Sparks flew, illuminating their faces in brief, bright flashes. The battle was fierce, but it was more than physical. Leora could feel their emotions, sharp and raw. Anger, pride, grief, fear, and something else. A longing that no one dared name. She placed her hand on the mark on her wrist, focusing on the pulse of the bond. Energy surged through her, and a wave of power knocked Soren back just long enough for her to speak. "Stop!" she cried. "I am not your enemy. The curse binds me to all of you. If we fight each other, we all lose." Soren staggered, breathing hard, eyes flashing with disbelief. The bond flared again, connecting their souls for the briefest moment. He saw her courage, her fear, and the truth of her words. "Something shifted. You speak boldly," Soren said finally, his voice quieter now. "And yet, perhaps you are not lying." The forest seemed to sigh as tension eased slightly, though danger was far from gone. Kale stepped back, keeping a wary eye on both of them. His sword lowered but ready. "You are learning," Kale said, his tone both warning and approving. "But the others? Arendor and Thalen will not be as forgiving." Leora nodded. She felt the pulse of the bond in her veins. It was strange, terrifying, and yet strangely intimate. She could feel the strengths and weaknesses of each alpha, their burdens and pain. And somewhere deep inside, she felt the faint stirrings of something more. Trust, perhaps, or even care. The next days were a test. Leora traveled with Kyle and Soren, learning their ways, earning small gestures of respect. She felt Soren's pride soften, the edges of his anger dulling. Kale, ever brooding, began to show fleeting moments of concern and protection that surprised her. The bond between them pulsed with power and emotion, fragile and dangerous yet strangely beautiful. Then, deep in the mountains, Arendor appeared. Unlike the others, he was quiet, calculating, and cold. His presence was a shadow that seemed to absorb light, and his eyes were sharp, assessing, untrusting. Leora felt her pulse quicken as he approached, the air around him electric with restrained power. "You move through my lands," Arendor said, voice smooth and controlled. "Do you understand the danger you bring?" "I must bond with you," Leora said, holding her ground. "It is the only way to survive the curse." Arendor's gaze swept over her, piercing, and for a moment Leora felt exposed in a way that no sword or fight could touch. Then with a flick of his wrist, he conjured a blade of shadow moving with lethal grace. The fight was silent, almost poetic, a dance of power and will. Leora felt the bond flare with pain and connection, intertwining her life force with Arendor's. She endured, and in doing so, glimpsed the man beneath the shadow. His grief, his loneliness, his unspoken desire for connection. When the clash ended, he stepped back, expression unreadable, yet something in his eyes had softened. "Perhaps survival is not impossible," he murmured. "Perhaps you are stronger than I thought." Finally, only Thalen remained. The ambitious Alpha appeared with a storm of wind and lightning, his power raw and overwhelming. He challenged her not just with weapons, but with words meant to break her spirit. "You think you can bind me? You, a girl?" he sneered. "I will see you broken before I allow it." Leora stood firm. She had seen the fear in the others, felt the humanity beneath their anger. She would not falter now. The bond flared bright, a pulse of energy that echoed through the mountains, connecting her to all four Alphas. For the first time, she felt a harmony of power, a fragile unity that had been impossible only days before. The battle with Thalen was fierce, but it was not just a fight. It was a test of heart, of courage, of will. Leora endured the pain, the fear, and the temptation to run, and in the final moment she reached out, placing her hand on Thalen's chest. The bond flared, and Thalen's fierce resistance melted into surprise, then acknowledgement. "You survived," he said, voice low, "and perhaps you are worthy." The bond was complete. Leora had linked her life to all four Alphas. But it was not a simple victory. The power within her surged, unsteady and overwhelming. She could feel each of them. Kale's brooding strength, Soren's fire, Arendor's shadow, Thalen's storm, all in one place, all in one body. The weight of their emotions pressed against her heart, dangerous and intoxicating. Yet amid the fear and the overwhelming force, something tender began to grow. The Alphas, each fierce and proud, began to see her not just as a pawn, but as someone who could change them, heal them, and perhaps be the one they could trust. Kale's gray eyes softened when he looked at her. Soren's fiery gaze held admiration she had never expected. Arendor's shadowed face revealed a rare smile, fleeting but real. And Thalen's stormy presence seemed lighter, more open, as if her courage had reached into the darkest corners of his heart. But the curse was not gone. A dark prophecy lingered in the shadows. The bonds they shared would demand sacrifices, choices that could destroy them all. Leora's heartbeat quickened as she realized the truth. Survival was only the beginning. What lay ahead would test not just their bodies, but their hearts, their souls, and the fragile trust they had begun to build. The night fell over the mountains, stars glowing faintly through the clouds. Leora stood with the four Alphas, hearts bound, powers linked, destinies intertwined. They were no longer enemies, but the road ahead was uncertain, dangerous, and full of temptation. "You have survived," Kale said quietly, stepping close, his voice a mix of warning and something softer, almost like care. "But this is only the beginning. The curse still watches, still waits." Leora met his gaze, feeling the bond pulse between them, a mixture of fear and strength. "I am ready," she said. "Whatever comes, we face it together." A distant howl echoed through the mountains, a reminder that the world beyond them was still alive, still dangerous. The Alphas tensed, but Leora felt a strange calm. For the first time, she realized that survival was not only about strength, it was about courage, about connection, about trust. And in that moment, amid the shadows and the cold night air, she understood something terrifying and beautiful. She had survived the impossible, bonded with those who had wanted her dead, and found a spark of something that could grow into hope, even love. The night was silent again, but the air shimmered with power. The curse had not ended. The journey was far from over. And yet, for the first time, Leora felt that she could face whatever came next. Not alone, but with the 4 alphas whose hearts, however dangerous, now beat in rhythm with her own. Cliffhanger. A dark wind swept down from the mountains, carrying whispers of a greater threat. The bonds would be tested, and the choice of sacrifice or unity loomed over them. The 4 alphas and Leora stood together, but the prophecy had not yet spoken its final word.